unions are sort of the natural brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers of cooperatives.
I think there may be some collective solutions to that keep worker integrity and dignity in place, and say let's have the strength of the union come into the 21st century with shared ownership.
Well, I think that this should be the model for people, is to try to organize a lot of workers' co-op so that the workers can have a decision making in their company to see where it goes. And if they have a stake in it, I know they will put a lot more and they will make the right decision because it's for their best interest.
I think that the labor movement brings a whole other added strength to the worker co-op movement, and vice versa.
Worker cooperatives need to join forces with organized labor, lobby with organized labor, and support each other in defending workers' rights and working families' participation in the economy, and basically ownership of our own economy.
There's an opportunity to really rethink the role of unions, the role of worker-owned companies, and how they're integrated. You know, we want a cooperative world, and the way to do it is reach out to unions.
Where labor and people's work is valued more than capital.
Workplace dignity is what people want in either house, whether you come out of the historical labor movement or you're a worker trying to create ownership, and trying to figure out a way that we can blend those lessons.
I think the thing they have in common is local control and supporting the community.
Cooperatives are here to transform the economy and the way that people relate to one another, and the unions have always been here to transform the way that people's labor relates to the economy and to each other. And I think working in these spaces where we come together around this it creates great opportunities for moving both of these motivations and missions.
Union co-op is typically a worker cooperative that has been formed by or incorporates a working relationship with organized labor as part of the model of humanely and democratically developing the workers' rights part of the business enterprise. The idea is that the workers in a worker cooperative are both the owners as well as the labor inside that unit. And the real transformation of the relationship again between labor and capital not only requires that it be financially sustainable, but also that the workers' needs and interests as members of a working force that have to be respected and treated in a certain kind of way are also respected.
It's not just a management worker fight, but it's actually a management workers together in a cooperative manner to run the business.
So the union co-op model is a way for working people to take back their jobs and really democratize power in the jobs that we spend most of our lives in.
The worker co-op movement is a way for labor to insert itself into the economy and through ownership and asset building. And I'm hoping that model catches the attention of labor and vice versa, that the worker co-op movement understands the importance of labor's input. Because this is a relentless struggle. This struggle that we're in now is hugely difficult and hugely important. And I think these are solutions to the problem that our people are having trouble seeing.
I'm pretty excited about union co-ops because I feel like it adds an extra level of capacity to the success of cooperative businesses, where worker co-ops owners can focus on the important things about being owners, about running the business, about operations, about governance, and that some of those other capacity issues around disputes, HR, sometimes in bigger worker co-ops, the differences between management and folks who have different kinds of positions can actually, or unions can be a really important resource to lean on in figuring that out, or even to help figure out things like benefits, insurance, things like that. So as worker co-ops scale or as they advance market share and focus on more the market orientation of things, being able to partner with unions, I think, is really important in terms of improving the workplace itself, and not needing to like reinvent the wheel and figure it out all over again, but really to lean into a whole other community of experience for strengthening the business.
If we can take agency back for job creation. Within the labor movement, we are defined by NLRB law, which places us in an adversarial relationship between employer and employee. So employers, capitalists, create jobs, bad jobs, mixed jobs, and we fight against the bad jobs that they create. Well, and I've said this many times, when you allow the enemy, who is the enemy, to define the battlefield, that's when you lose the most often. That's the art of war, right? So we have been declining steadily for decades, being defined in, having, that basically limits us, okay? What we have to do is reimagine ourselves outside of that being locked into that specific role and take back agency for job creation. So unions should be creating jobs and more actively. And the way that they should create them is as worker cooperatives, because that's the way you're going to create jobs that are for the 99%, so that we have some control over our economic destiny, some 100% workplace democracy. That is the goal of the labor movement, is to create greater workplace democracy. Worker cooperatives have 100% workplace democracy. So the way that we should envision the creation of jobs is through worker cooperatives. So we have to talk about the union co-op model in terms of a job creation strategy.
The union works jointly with management and the workers inside. They sit there on a Friday where we go and meet with the workers and have input and say, here are some of the problems, here we could sit together and iron it out. It's a model I will recommend every day to anyone who wants to do that, in comparison to what I've seen outside of it, where the workers have no say inside it. The morale is down, the turnover is high. In this case, with cooperative and 1199, this has not been the case, and it's making it.
Historically, unions fought really for the dignity of the worker and made sure that workers had access to representation and rights in the workplace and were treated with respect. Well, ownership could do that too, and there's a risk that ownership, that people get lost as the worker in that space. So when a co-op is unionized, especially as it gets to scale and there's more people, there would be a protection in place that the union helps with representation. And we've seen this at Cooperative Home Care Associates. It's probably the best example here in New York, where we have almost 2,000 people working there any given time, and they don't get to really feel the benefits of their ownership except when the dividends get given out, if they get given out. So they want to feel the benefits of ownership with much more of a sort of say in the workplace and a recognition that their voice matters. And so the traditional model of representation can really help with labor management projects where the workers have someone they can talk to if there's conflict, or find some solutions that work for the whole workplace.
Started with the Madragon model, and the reason we picked that is because its emphasis on building community and social justice aspect of it, as long as building power amongst workers in the community.
And then of course we've also read a lot about in Madragon social committees, and the idea that you need these sort of systems of worker power that are not just ownership. Like there has to also be, the collective bargaining is another way that you build worker power, even if there's already worker ownership.
The work that's been done with the Steelworkers Union and representatives from Mondragon have helped create kind of a model of how this was done related to the worker committees inside some of the larger plants in Mondragon. I think people are trying to use those lessons to learn the best way that we can do it, and hopefully help revive some of the work of the labor movement that has been besieged by a lot of plant closings and other things that are weakening its base. So this becomes an opportunity for the labor movement to revitalize itself.
So unionization is on the decline. Workers in more and more places don't have representation. It's more and more every man for himself. And then you have this co-op model starting up or starting to get some legs to say we can own the operation, we can do it. So can unions step in to help that? We think yes. We think unions can bring resources because any startup or any company that's transitioning into shared ownership needs help financially, needs help with ways to run, and we think there are people in the unions that have a lot of this expertise already. So how can we bring the expertise that is probably stretched in trying to save the union and say how do we save the work instead of just save the union? How do we save the work? So we think union folks, representatives, business agents, executives might see when a company is in trouble and say let's go in and save it, not find the next buyer, but how do we help save it collectively?
This is a long-term strategy. It's not going to address the immediate strike at hand, but it's a necessary strategy. We need to take back ownership of our economy, and for the labor leader, mounting strikes and mounting contract campaigns, extremely labor-intensive, extremely monetarily expensive endeavors, and we have to do it every 3 to 5 years. So contracts expire, we have to mount another campaign, we have to defend what we won in the last campaign, we have to ask for more, and so we have to create that sense of our powerful positioning by mounting a contract campaign. Those are very expensive endeavors. Now, what if some of your bargaining units that you are representing, you didn't have to do that because they're worker cooperatives? See, that reduces the overhead for the union. That's a positive outcome. That's a need of the union. So we need to address our discussion about what worker cooperatives bring to this, our union co-op model, from the needs of unions as well as from the needs of the worker cooperatives.
It comes with SCIU. I think it's a model for SCIU where we could build workers' power, continue to build workers' power inside of it. Without the union activities inside of it, it's less of a save for the workers. But SCIU, I think, will be something that we'll aspire to do. When we finished working with cooperative, we had almost like a blueprint that we were going to take, and I was meeting with other employers and saying to them, here is a model that I would like for you to emulate because I've seen it work much better here in comparison to the other agency that I work.
Certainly worker co-ops, the notion of owning our own businesses and creating assets and wealth is something that the labor movement must take a big titanic turn and address, because simply arguing with the owners of corporations about and owners of businesses about the few pennies that they're going to allow us to have is not sufficient. We have to have our own strength. We have to have our own funding. We have to have our own businesses and our own wealth.
So excited to welcome you here today to our 3rd annual Union Co-op Symposium. We are thrilled, and we have people in this room, we'll find out soon in a variety of ways from all over the country, is that there's an extraordinary amount of collective wisdom in this room, and that we access that by connecting deeply with one another. We can share templates and business plans and ideas and our challenges when we really know people.
So the symposium, this is the 3rd. We do them every other year, so we did about 6 years ago. We started the first one when CUCI was brand new as well, pretty new, and the movement was pretty young, so we're happy to be hosting this again for the third time, and welcome to Cincinnati.
To see this many people from this many different places with this many different stripes of projects, it's extremely exciting.
CUCI, the goal is to create an economy that works for all and creates family-sustaining jobs for our whole community. So we see that as happening through a whole integrated network of cooperatives that are worker-owned and unionized.
$16 billion corporation with over 100,000 people in it. It has more than 240 cooperative organizations. It wins awards left and right. It's voted as one of the top places in the world in which to work. It's under the aegis of One Worker, One Vote. It has its own university, has its own social insurance mutual, and it has its own bank. And what's so important, Rob Mayoral and Chris Cooper are in the room. They are the authors of the Union Co-op model. And Rob was, that's right, they're both, that's right, right there. Give them a big round of applause. They were a big part of the transition from the Montreal experience to the Union Co-op experience, which started with the Steelworkers, but then has branched to so many other unions, many of whom are in the room.
Do you think that wealth could be distributed in a more equitable way? Can co-ops offer a proposal to change the situation?
We want to give an award to Tom and to the Steelworkers for their instrumental work in making co-ops a possibility in this country. We're really glad that you guys have taken this on and become a leader in the cooperative movement, especially the union cooperative movement. So thank you, Tom, and Lindsay, on behalf of us, the Steelworkers.
The capital system and the system for workers is broken. There really is no good way. If you're just going to work for someone for the rest of your life, you're going to get what they give you. And if you're not a union, you don't even have a chance of trying to take something stronger by using your solidarity. And so I got to understand the Mondragon and what had gone on over there, and saw this as something that America really sort of needed. So that's where it began. We're pleased that it's spread in other places. We're pleased that there's so many interest shown from other unions and that they're trying to see where they can fit the model. We're looking for opportunities as they come where we can find some co-op or worker ownership model that'll fit together for workers and they have a fair chance at sort of really, getting a reward for the labor that they put into it and a fair reward.
So that means that everybody here in this room needs to take on responsibility to go to their local, and talk about unions. We need to first spread the word about what worker cooperatives mean to our economy, that it's transformative, that this is the way we're going to take back ownership of our economy.
I think it's also really impressive the work that's happening on the ground. So the study that people are doing around the Union Co-ops model, the reflections and interventions around how labor and how even unions inside of other cooperative sectors and in solidarity with other workplaces, how we can sort of show up and have the backs and be interlinked with workers all over the place. And then how groups on the ground who are interested in iterating on the Union Co-op model have been able to start building up local ecosystems because of the connectivity of the Union Co-op Council and being able to learn from those organizations in other places.
And a very important part of the strategy, you have to have local leaders because those are the ones that can influence the decision-making of the unions.
But Lucy came into being as part of our local's effort to figure out what the hell do you do when the car wash's owner abandons them. But Lucy is learning to be an incubator by incubating. The car washeros at the Vermont Gauge Car Wash used their history of being the first group of workers to get a union contract, their solidarity, their self-organization, their relationship one-to-one, and their trust to trust each other enough to take the opportunity when some cash was offered as a loan from the local union to do this.
The Wellspring Co-op Corporation is an organization, a nonprofit parent organization that's been functioning in Springfield, Massachusetts, South Central Massachusetts, since about 2011, and we've created 3 worker co-ops, one of which is a greenhouse, an urban greenhouse, and United Food and Commercial Workers are involved in that project. There's a significant commitment from the Wellspring Co-op Corporation throughout to involve labor. Labor is part of the board. It's a designated seat on the board, and we're trying to include labor in the various co-ops that we're setting up. And they have been a really strong support for all of the Wellspring projects. The other 2 projects are an upholstery co-op and an old window workshop. Those are the projects that we're working on now with lots of other ideas on the burner.
We work closely with labor to think about new models for organizing workers, for aggregating workers, for retaining good employees, good employers that care about worker issues. So we bring the worker co-op model as a tool, and not just worker co-ops, producer co-ops as well, purchasing co-ops, co-ops of businesses as well, to the labor movement to say, like, how can we help build worker power using this model where that centers workers. How can we use this model to build your movement, to build worker power? And we're specifically doing that in a couple industries. We're working in childcare. We're partnering with SEIU to build a network of family childcare providers that can help them stabilize as businesses and aggregate their voice and build political power. And we're also working in home care in a similar fashion.
The Cincinnati Union Cooperative Initiative is a network of, the goal is to be a network of co-ops across the greater Cincinnati region that are union co-ops.
We incorporated in November of 2011. We launched our first co-op in April of 2012.
Most of you are probably familiar with our Harvest Co-op, but in case you aren't, we work to give people access to healthy local food in a way that honors land and labor. And this past year, we farmed on approximately 12 acres using sustainable growing practices. And we have a food hub where we bring in our produce and other local producers' produce and products and distribute them back out to all members of the greater Cincinnati area.
We do energy efficiency in residential buildings. We help homeowners to cut their energy bills, typically from 20 to 30%, improve the comfort in the houses, improve the air quality in the houses, and also produce sustainable jobs.
Inequality comes in a lot of forms, and one of them is unequal access to healthy food. And Apple Street Market is a response to that inequity. In particular, when our neighborhoods lost their grocery store in August 2013. Now our vision is not just to create a grocery store in our neighborhood, but to create neighborhood-sized, full-service co-op grocery stores in every food desert in Cincinnati.
So one of the new pieces of work that we're getting into this year, also a new addition in my life, is childcare. And we are partnering with the Teachers Union and with Amos and with ASCII. I think my prop is not going to cooperate. There we go. And really start looking into how can we address the issues around childcare.
A lot of people that are interested in home health care co-ops for elders and for children, and so we really want to understand what are the nuts and the bolts, what social, racial justice, equity things we need to work through in order to create a full culture of co-ops. Because we have a lot of deserts here in Cincinnati as far as childcare, food, and home care. So what would it look like if we could actually build and create this community where people can take care of each other?
I think the diversity of co-ops, like I met some people doing healthcare, just and car washes and different things. So it really expanded my mind as far as how we can build a whole infrastructure. What are the core competencies and what are the needs of the community, and how we can address those through co-ops. You know what I mean? Like finding our needs and organizing together to meet those needs and keeping it all within a network. So then we're even, we're circulating our money within the co-op network, right, to sustain our needs.
We're in the midst of building a model for nursing homes. We have an exploratory committee, which is this group around here, and also have a network of the ICA group and research, as well as the university CUNY system that's helping us build this model.
Move forward, and we really have a lot accomplished with Union and COPEC. We work together, and I'm very proud to represent this agency from the union because it's made it easier to represent the workers.
I'm Seth from Bellingham, Washington, community food co-op there. We're in the process of organizing with UFCW 21. Of having Central Co-op and BCC, so we're using that to fuel our efforts, just showing that the union values and the co-op values are one and the same.
Co-ops Council of the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops began in 2007. It came out of the Eastern Conference for Workplace Democracy, which is the eastern region of the Worker Co-ops network. In 2007, where Lynn Williams was our keynote speaker, and the membership of the conference decided to create a council to take up the notion of bringing labor and worker co-ops together. And so we have been meeting monthly ever since.
And the main gap was that there's nobody bringing people together from around the country. Yes, we have certain efforts in specifically regional areas, and those are powerful and meaningful, but then how are we getting the word out? And so Mary picked up the co-chairing with me, after a few months, and she has worked tirelessly to build this network, this national network, and just trying to connect people so we can start that discussion about how do we reach out and educate the labor community about worker cooperatives, because that's a big gap right now. We started off by just building this network, and then we started doing these workshops at conferences. And like I said, the first ones were at worker cooperative conferences, which is one presentation. But then, we started reaching out to other labor conferences, let them know that this movement is happening, which many of them don't even know, and the advantages that it brings to the labor movement.
The Union Co-ops Council of the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops is actually our oldest member council. They've been around for, at this point, over 10 years. And over that time, we've created a space, a platform, an organizing space for worker owners to come together and learn more about the union co-op model, build relationships with folks in the labor sector, and come together as members to build power in a grassroots way. And so there's an opportunity to reach the kind of scale of connectivity convened by, under the umbrella of a national organization, and then to have a translocal cross-pollination. What are you doing? What are you working on? How can we support each other? How can we test out successful strategies that you used in one location and use it, apply it here? And I think the other thing that's really important is that it provides visibility for that work.
We've hooked people up to do radio shows and TV shows in their locales. I think there's evidence that the movement has been growing both within our council and within the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops.
First and foremost, sharing of information and networking, because you're learning that what other people have already done, what works, what doesn't, things that we should try, things that we've never thought of before, and it's really a catalog clearinghouse for shared experiences.
So I think the role of the Union Co-op Council at the U.S. Federation is a steady placeholder to have these conversations. When there's a need, there's a lot of expertise that could plug in. So when LA went through some changes with the car wash arrows and I think it was Pacific Electric, there was already some competencies collected that could be applied. And we're hoping the same thing for New York. We've seen it in Massachusetts around Wellspring. So we think there's sort of some common language that's being constantly cultivated that can be applied to the conversations as they elevate.
I've been participating on the council calls for about 2 years now as a representative of Shared Capital, and I think it's been an incredible space for historically for sharing these stories, just kind of helping people to explore the ideas that we're trying to build on, sharing real case studies and examples from around the country in this space that is still kind of defining itself and figuring itself out. How do we take this to the next level, and how do we turn from a space that is about communication and networking and sharing ideas, which is incredibly important, but move to that next level of actually proactively helping one another and supporting and developing.
It's been a slow, steady process. It's continuing. There's a lot more work to do. Nothing is finished yet. It's barely started. But we feel like this has been a good platform for really, really important ideas.
We are able to play a role to help the union movement understand co-ops, and for co-ops to understand how to get a stronger worker movement. All the lessons learned of the labor movement of the last 50, 70, 80 years are really about how do we make sure workers are protected. And I'm afraid sometimes that we lose some of that history with people not reading history, not knowing the wins of health and safety, the wins of representation, collective bargaining. And so what happens is too many people start from scratch. So I'm hoping one of the things is that we help preserve some of the history and some of the wins that into the next generation of what workplaces look like.
I would like to see more diversity and going more out into the community. So I think a deeper level of organizing, amongst workers and just amongst community members, especially in impoverished communities, and how to really build this from the grassroots.
And unions are the last, really the last line of defense. And so, I don't think there is any other type of institution that is really going to step up and help protect workers and generally our participation in the economy. And so we very much need to be part of that, and not just think of it as what can unions do for worker cooperatives, what can unions do for me. It's what we can do to participate in the broader labor movement. Worker cooperative community has to see themselves as part of the broader labor movement.
This year, what we're looking at is trying to see how we could expand that within long-term care. And the long-term care portion of it is trying to include the nursing homes into those failing nursing homes, because the thread that they have out there is the for-profit nursing home who comes inside and they buy up those nursing homes, bleed it dry, cut back the worker wages and things like that. And so the workers don't have a dog in this fight inside it. So for them, they're always on the losing end. But if the worker believes that this is something that they're building for them, I see it for the future to save the non-profit nursing home in this industry, and I think that's the way that we need to do.
The future is ours to create. And I think by combining the incredible resources of the union sector with the vision and the dynamism of the cooperative sector, I think if we get ourselves organized properly and create good planning around this and act on that planning, I think we can accomplish a lot of incredible things.
And we're going to get there. We're going to find a different model for people to get paid a good wage and then share in whatever profits come out of that, whatever growth comes.
I think we have an incredible opportunity here. It's a difficult environment policy-wise. It's a difficult environment in our economy. But in this difficult moment, there's also a real opportunity to rethink the models that we've been using, rethink what our economy can look like, and test models for a fundamentally more human economy. And I think that the intersection of cooperation, of cooperatives and labor, and the power that labor brings to the workforce, the voice that it elevates, that collaboration can, fundamentally transform industries, and especially those industries where we're seeing industries that are about humans, caregiving, childcare, home care, industries where the person is at the center of it, that we can really transform those in the next decade through this type of collaboration.